Okay, and I will introduce our speaker now, Jancy Traversa.
It's difficult sometimes to come up with an idea for a talk. You have several sometimes rolling around in your head, and they usually go for about 2 minutes and then they die. So I was wanting to have something that was a little bit more full and could at least go my full 15 to 20 minutes. And so I came upon an idea, and the next question was, well, how do I start it and kind of get back into the flow of speaking and to get going? And so one of the first ideas was, we go, oh yeah, I'm talking to Doug, and I said, oh, we'll tell a Jancy Doug story, oh, you know, people like those. And I went, no, we need something else. And so we're driving around yesterday, and I'm thinking, a limerick, we had that poem thing, so we'll do a limerick. And so it started, once there was a small little garden for this tale, I am begging your pardon. But garden and pardon are really hard to rhyme with if you start to think about it and you kind of run out of words. So the limerick idea went there. So the third idea to go with my garden idea was a joke. So I found this joke and I tried it out on my dad, and he gave me this really blank look. Not a good sign. And I go, and then he goes, oh yeah, I get it. Okay. And then, so I think, well, maybe it's in the telling. I've just kind of not quite got it right. So I tried out on my son in Clarksville and over the phone. And he goes, ha, ha, ha. Okay, so I'm trying it out on you. I have repeatedly practiced this joke and tried to enunciate the punchline so I do not mess it up. But this is my big fear, I'm going to mess up the punchline. But okay, here we go. Two friars are having trouble paying off the belfry, so they open a florist shop. Everyone wants to buy flowers from the men of God who so they go into this business, and it's really booming. It's quickly booming. The florist across town sees a huge drop in sales and asks the two friars to close their shop. But the friars refuse. The florist across the town continues to see huge drops in sales, and there he's saying, stop, I'm having trouble feeding my family. Please close. Again, they refuse. So the florist hires Hugh McTaggart. Hugh is the roughest, toughest thug in town and is hired to persuade the friars to close. Hugh asks the friars to close the florist shop. When they refuse, he threatens to beat the crap out of them and wreck their shop every day they remain open. So they close. And this proves once and for all that Hugh, and only Hugh, can prevent florist friars. Okay, thank you for your generosity. I appreciate it. So I originally started this talk, and I was thinking about nature and loving nature. But with a lot of things in life, once you start to examine, the truth hits and it becomes a bit more clearer. I said, I really hate cold weather. I really hate hot weather. Oh, I don't like to get wet when it rains, and bugs that bite aren't cool. There's a lot of nature that's really gross, like masses of newly hatched bug eggs and grubs. Grubs are really repulsive. So nature really wasn't that wonderful unless the weather is just right and the bugs aren't biting. So I had to mix the idea of, proudly calling myself a nature lover. I had to go in a different direction. The joys of my hobby came to mind, but I wasn't excited about that either. I started to think about what I really wanted to share and came up with the gardening idea. I love quilting, I love knitting, and cooking. They are all great ideas, but I'll save them maybe for another day. Today, it's Gardener will be my title. I'm a gardener who sees magic in every corner of my very small garden. Every year, I go to visit relatives in my garden, relatives that are still part of my life, even if they've been gone for years. Just the smell of the freshly turned soil brings back memories of potato harvests in Maine. That's where my grandparents used to live. When the tulips start to bloom in the spring, I see my aunt's very favorite flower, so that brings back memories. The tulips and the buds coming up, I see my grandmother Hall racing across the lawn in Maine, vigorously flapping her apron, trying to scare the deer away from eating the tops off of the newly emerging flowers. And my other grandmother also was a gardener. Cherry tomatoes bring back the memories of that grandmother. She would take me out to the backyard and we'd go along the back and pick off the cherry tomatoes that she would have right hot, nice and warm off the vine. So they all bring back wonderful memories every time my garden starts to come into season. But it's not only past members of my family that visit, but friends that come to see me as well. Van comes up every spring with his peony as it pushes through the soil in the front yard. So many of you come to visit as well. Lena shows up with a bleeding heart plant, and Indian vegetables bring Casey to mind, that he's given me seeds. Betsy Webb's there, and so is Barbara Schneider. They come up with the irises, and Janet comes up every time I harvest the walking onions. So there's so many people out there. This kind of magic is what brings back so many thoughts of memories, families, and friends. Yes, I admit it's kind of childish. It's this childish fear that I get every time a seedling pops out into the sunshine. Doug kind of looks at me with this cockeyed eye because he's not a gardener, but it's like, look what happened, it grew. It's just so exciting. I think it's the best magic of the garden. When you hold that seed in your hand, you're holding a life to be. There's so much energy and potential into that really insignificant looking brown seed. It's as if Earth has given me a gift. All through the summers, there are treasures to be had in the garden. I can anticipate that first red tomato months ahead of time. I think this has to do with the cardboard Kroger tomatoes that you have to endure all winter. That sweet strawberry, they're a great gift. One of my favorite treasures is found in the upturned soil of a potato roll. As you're digging along, it's like, if that's not digging treasure when you find that potato, what is? It's like, whoa, look what I found. And yes, maybe I need to get out more, but I really find excitement in my garden. And I know for you physicists and engineers out there, I know it's botany and can be explained scientifically, but when I see the light pink apple blossoms in the early morning rays of the sun, and where you feel that calming sensation when the sun heats those pine needles under the pine trees, or even when I feel the worms and I see that brown dirt and I know how healthy and that soil is as it kind of runs through your fingers, it's got to be something more than science. It really touches every one of my senses. Alfred Austin once said, "The glory of gardening, hands in the dirt, head in the sun, heart with nature. To nurture a garden is to feel not just on the body. Is to feed not just on the body, but the soul." It's magic. I've received other gifts from the garden. They are the gifts of patience and acceptance. That I have any patience and acceptance in anything is magical indeed, as people who know me will attest to. But gardening, strangely, is one place I seem to be able to have these attributes. Maybe one day I'll be able to have them outside of the garden. The garden is all about waiting. You wait to plant, you wait for germination, you wait to harvest. You can't rush it, I can tell you, because I have tried, and it doesn't work very well. So guess what? You might as well sit back and be patient. As far as the acceptance idea goes, nature does its own thing, and you really only think you're in control. This is where the gardener's mantra comes in, the title of my talk today. When the fungus hit the peach tree this year, I muttered, well, there's always next year. When I accidentally grew a monster squash that took over my garden, the mantra was said a little bit louder, there's always next year. I should diverge and tell you about my monster squash. This crazy thing took over the shed, it crawled over my privacy fence and proceeded to take over the bush in the front of the house. It was quite awesome. Anyway, when the corn blew down this year, in spite of my grand plan on how to keep it standing up straight, and the grumbled even louder, well, there's a next year. And it seems to get a little bit louder when the frost hit the apple blossoms. I may have yelled, well, there's always next year, you know. But for all of the missteps, the bugs, the funguses, the frost, you know what? There is always next year. My garden is also teaching me determination because, you know, you kind of stomp down your foot and say, there's always next year. Tennessee, you're not going to get me this year. So, I may accept my lack of control, but I don't stop getting tired of trying to make it better for next year. I've been working hard on putting things into that right perspective and trying to understand that really, in the big scheme of things, I'm doing really well, and so is my garden. The disappointment, I'll have to admit, is still there, but so is an acceptance that, okay, I did my best, and even life goes on. And that fear, oh boy, I've lost my spot, sorry. So I've done my best, and if things didn't work out this year, it'll always work out next. All these setbacks are really just part of life. Another aspect of the acceptance develops when things aren't growing correctly or going quite right. Fear of failure is a very hard hurdle to jump for me. But the garden has been a place where I've learned to be a little bit more daring. When the blueberry bushes that were planted 3 or more years ago, according to Doug like 10 years ago, were not happy, I finally decided to move them. Letting go and understanding that they might die in the new spot. They weren't doing well in the old spot, so it wasn't that important if they died. The chance that they would do well was also in the mix. But for me, that letting go and taking that risk was a really important step. Well, this particular story happens to have a happy ending because now I have very happy 5 blueberry plants growing in the backyard. So that one did work out well. There are risks of failures every time you try something new. There was a year I tried to plant leeks. Didn't turn out too well. Okay? This year I'm trying garlic. It may or may not turn out so well. I read all the instructions, covered them with hay for the potential frost that was coming yesterday. Poor Lucy had to experience me yelling at the dog. I left the gate open a tiny pinch, and there was a dog vigorously rolling on his back in the hay over the garlic bed. He was having a very good time. Poor Lucy heard on the phone, "Get out of my garden!" And so maybe I can blame the dog if the garlic doesn't come up right. This spring, I'm anticipating planting great plants. So we'll see maybe if that one will come out. But each and every time I reach outside of my comfort zone, there is personal growth. This is true outside of the garden as well. The disappointment is still there when the things don't work out, but an acceptance that I did my best is a step toward a greater acceptance of things you can't change. That all these setbacks are, once again, part of life. If I learn what not to do the next time, maybe the experience was worth it. It's kind of like the Bernstein Bears, what not to do. If you learn what not to do, then maybe next time you'll do what's right. The real magic is that a controlling, impatient person like myself is realizing that it's a waste of time to be controlling and impatient in the garden. One day, these attitudes and attributes might reach into my everyday life. Maybe not, but we'll try. The garden gives a clear picture of the interconnectedness of life as well. That circular path of the vegetable to compost, to dirt, to vegetable. Man, that's just magical. Doug and I have 3 compost bins going, and as the fall comes on, we will continue to compost leaves as well. There's also a worm farm stashed in my hall closet, which my mother-in-law is continually grossed out about. All the scraps of food go into the compost bin or the worm farm. The food breaks down along with the shredded newspaper, grass, leaves, ash, and makes us super dirt or compost. Your poem worked so well in with my compost idea. It's amazing. It's just one big circle. And once again, I know science is there and how it all works, but if you're not thinking like scientists, you're kind of going like, whoa, look at what I got. It's so exciting. Another circle in the garden is the way the plants work together. I plant flowers by bringing in bring in the bees and help pollinate my vegetables. Certain plants I do know help to improve the taste of others. One example I read about is I plant basil next to my tomatoes because it's supposed to improve their flavor. They also found about I found out about other plants that are bug deterrents. Onions I plant, marigolds, and hot peppers are a few that I plant next to plants that are very popular with bugs to try to deter them to go and eat these other things or just go away. I have seen people plant roses at the end of grapevines to deter the Japanese beetles because roses are really enjoyed by Japanese beetles and it keeps them from the grapevines. My small garden has all of these things going on. Plants, bugs, bees, composts, worms, they're all working together to grow my garden. It's really cool. It's magic. The last bit of magic is the gift of hopes and dreams. I think this is really important as well. The garden has given me these. I am generally not a dreamer, but a realist. And to be honest with you, I don't really believe in magic, but as close as I can come, it's the garden that gives me the magic. So, as I've gotten older, so many of my dreams are lost or forgotten, and many have been achieved, which is a real positive. But when I sit in my garden, I see the plan for next year. That can find me out there kind of daydreaming because I'm visualizing where the tomatoes are going to go next year. Oh, well, this block out that, and so I can sit out there for 15 minutes and he won't even know what in the world I'm up to, and it appears that I'm doing nothing, but I'm dreaming and planning. I dream of cans of homemade salsa sitting on the shelf. I see hopes and dreams for the future. I see that next strawberry crop. I see the next corn harvest. It's not going to fall down next year, is it? These hopes and dreams give me a purpose, a healthy drive to keep planning and working on my dream garden. I was thinking this morning that the one thing is cool is you never have a perfect garden. There'll always be bugs and fungus. So, hey, this dream's never going to end, is it? The great thing about gardening is it's a dream that can start anew every spring when that ground thaws and when that first seed catalog comes in the mail in the dead of winter. It's the magic that keeps on giving. A few Sundays ago, Trudy shared a quote from Langston Hughes that fits so well with the topic. Hold fast to your dreams, for if dreams die, life is a broken-winged bird that cannot fly. So I'm still holding fast to this dream. It may not be the ones that Langston Hughes was thinking of, but my garden works for me, for my dreams. It's important to have dreams for the future, even if it's only a dream for the next crop. My garden may not have taught me everything I need to know, but it surely has some really good lessons to teach if I'm just willing to see them and probably apply them. Gardening is my magic, my dreams, my hopes, and my memories. Along the way and through every season, it continues to teach me about life. We're hoping to enlarge the garden this next year, and Doug is really pushing for potatoes. Vegetable, which is questionable that he enjoys, a vegetable he enjoys. As for this fall, my experiment is Brussels sprouts, a vegetable Doug does not enjoy. So I suspect he's been hoping that a fungus, some sort of worm, anything will kill off this poor Brussels sprout. But little does he know that I go out there every morning almost, search through the little leaves for bugs and things, and pick them off. So, I will succeed. Every year is a new adventure. I can't wait to get those seed catalogs in the mail, and what new veggies are awaiting to be planted. I leave you with these closing words from Jessica Coop. As I leave the garden, I take with me a renewed view and a quiet soul. So as for talk back, I'd like you guys to, you can talk about gardening, but I would also like you to think about the hobbies that give you meaning and purpose in your life, or things that inspire you. Oftentimes we look at the big important things, but so often we forget about those little tiny things that can inspire us and kind of give us a spring in our step for that day, that little tiny thing. And I'd like you guys to share with me some of the things that kind of go, yeah, today's a good day. I'm going to do whatever gives you that spring in your step.